everyone. We're about to do a live with the Honest Midwife, aka Victoria Rickson. Hopefully. Everyone, hi. Ah, here we go. Here we go. Here she comes. Yay! Hello, my beautiful friend. How are you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm wonderful. Thank you so much for agreeing to do this. This is really exciting.
Yes, it's been a long time, maybe 100 years too long, perhaps.
Yeah, for sure. So I'm just going to do a little introduction for people watching who maybe don't know who you are. I also want to say how special your story is, and what gets me is how you have turned the narrative of fear into love. What I notice, drama gets attention. Drama, people love drama. And what you've done, you've gone from this is awful to doing the inner work, and this is what makes you stand out in my eyes more than anything. It's self-love, self-compassion, that you're not abandoning yourself and you're staying true to who you are. So, right, welcome everyone. Victoria Rickson, aka the Honest Midwife. She has just blown up on Twitter because she's staying true to who she is. She's come out with her story, and it is an incredible story. So I'm going to shut up now. Tell me how you got here and how you managed to join when push comes to shove. My God, we're lucky to have you.
Oh, thank you so much. Just to be honest, I don't even know where to start. It just feels like the whole process of becoming a midwife started by having a home birth. You know, I had my own baby in my living room. He's there, actually upstairs because he's got a dicky tummy. But I was like, you need to tune in so you can hear your story, James. But it just came from having 2 hospital births, and then without even knowing anything about really being a woman at 27 and really knowing myself, my body knew I should be birthing at home. It wasn't even discussed. I just said I'm having it. You know, my ex-husband, I think, might be on this call, and he was really not down for it. He was a bit like, no, you know, I'm really uncomfortable because there was a family story about home birth, but you know, they happen. So anyway, I went and had this home birth, and honestly felt like it was the making of me. I connected on a level that I've never connected to myself before. I think I remember ringing my dad after and saying I'm never doing that again, but because it was so, the emotions were so overwhelming. But you're like, I really want another baby, I want to do it again. And I felt like a bit of an initiation as a woman. Like I felt like I can't explain it. It was like I'd left the body behind and I'd gone into somebody else. I'd grown, I'd gone into something, and then me and this beautiful little being just connected on a whole different level, because in my home, I controlled the narrative of what I wanted. I listened to my body. So when after that journey, I was like, I'm becoming a midwife. That's it, I'm doing it. So it wasn't, you know, my mum trained as a midwife. She didn't qualify, but she trained as a midwife. And I think, like, I didn't do it for everybody else's reasons. I did it for me and what I wanted, and it was from my birth. But very oddly, when I went into midwifery, I couldn't believe how much I feared going to a home birth. I was petrified. So I was the opposite, and I became a real obstetric-y, fast-paced, drug, time, everything on time, this midwife. And it just didn't fit what I remembered. And very quickly, I'm quite, I can get sucked easily. And I got sucked into the system really, really, really quickly, because I thought, oh, I might have got it wrong. I might have got that wrong, or I missed something. Oh, okay, I'll just be open-minded and I'll go in with it. But Christ, you know, bearing in mind I was 30 when I started, 29, the bullying at uni was horrific. And it was so prolific that I changed very quickly, very, very quickly. And I think what I realized was it doesn't matter who you are and what background you come from. there's something about midwifery and the frequency around it, and I didn't click then what I've clicked now, and the puzzle didn't come together. So I persevered through my ego. I can't let everybody down. I want the degree, I want the notoriety, I want to be, oh, I'm a midwife. There is something in that, and that could be an ancestral calling of your innate way as a woman, but I don't like to be too fluffy. I just like to go with what I experience and a bit of facts. But sometimes I'm like, you can't actually fact check everything. Like fact check, fact check, fact check. Where's the evidence? Where's the evidence? No, it doesn't matter. It's an experience, you know. You can't, when somebody dies and you cut them open, you don't see how much they loved. You don't see how much they feared. You don't see how much they suffered mentally. They're just a fit. So where is all that energy gone? Where's it disappeared to? Somewhere it belonged. So I think for me, there was this real detachment very quickly of midwifery. They wanted to shut you down and make you into a robot. And that's why I suffered, because I am true to who I am. And I've always been a goddess out there. And I will not watch people be bullied, and I stick up for the underdog. And it's always people say, oh, it's you, you know, it's your, that's just who you are. And, you know, you really need to tone it down. No, it's got me where I am. But basically, as I went into midwifery, I was indoctrinated. I was very quickly a robot, and I think when I started to wake up, my pancreas failed 1 year after being a midwife, and I got type 1 diabetes. And I thought, right, there is something telling me that this is wrong, but I don't know why, because the system is there to help women birth. Why would they want to harm women? And I just couldn't piece that enormity together. And I adore my colleagues, because where I worked, if I'm honest, particularly, it was a good hospital, and it's a good trust, and it's good people. That's not to say that that's not happening elsewhere, which I've obviously now realized with the movement that I set up. So I didn't leave thinking, oh, you know, it's about this was about me going, right, I can't make change in it. I'm going to make change out of it. And I was very naive, and I thought it was localized. It's not localized. This is a worldwide. Since men got involved with birth, or whatever you want to call it, it's changed. And we're now in a situation where it's an absolute shit show. It's a mess. And the only way I can describe it is when I became diabetic, I got pulled to all these clinic appointments. I was so overwhelmed. I was traumatized. Don't eat this, don't do that, do this, do that, don't do that, don't do that, don't do this, but do that, but don't do that, but do that. And I was like, okay, I'll do that, but don't, what did you say don't do? And it became this real confusion of my own disability, of, I don't even like to call it disability, but it is. So I would be looking at my diabetes saying, well, I don't actually understand it because I haven't gone within. So as soon as I started to go within and learn what my body was reacting to food, to exercise, and I went a bit neurotic with it, but I worked out every single thing that impacted my diabetes, and none of it made sense to the evidence that was being told to me. So what became very interesting was I no longer had the understanding of what was needed of me, because what they were telling me didn't match what was happening. And I think that's where we are with midwifery. So I feel like we've got all this evidence that changes, and all these Saving Babies' Lives Care Bundle, and all these drivers, and all these inquiries, and nothing's getting better. So it's no one now knows where to turn, and you can't just easily go, right, you have a home birth. You can, but you've got to be careful, because we've got sicker women because they're made to be sick. So I feel we're in a really difficult position. And I think when I left, I had no idea of the enormity of what was going on in midwifery. I thought it was just localized. I didn't know who Sheila Byron was. I didn't know where anybody was. I didn't know who you were. I just told out the trust. See you later. I'm off. You're all crazy, you know. Toddled off in my own little bubble. Bang. My world exploded. And I think for me, I cannot bear injustice. I cannot bear lying. I cannot bear the mistrust to women. It doesn't sit right in my bones. Even now, talking about it, I can feel it in my spine. You know, so a woman would come to the door and I'd say, we are busy, and I don't know how long it's going to be to see you. Now, my argument to my managers were, why can't we tell women to have a choice? The choice is this. We are in a state where we're in special measures, let's be honest, that's where everybody is. Why can't I tell that woman, one, we're busy, two, you are a woman and you know what's wrong with you, and if you go within, you can make a choice here. But we robbed them of their choices. We would say, go and sit in that room and don't leave because we fear-mongered you so much you now don't know how to make a choice. So women have lost choice. They've lost reasoning of who they are. Like, birth belongs to women, people. It's a woman's body. It is her right to have anything. So what I would be doing is saying, we're busy, and then I get told off for telling people we're busy and we're short-staffed. So all these little things started ticking in my head, like, why can't we give women a choice? If you go home, you might labour and you might not have a midwife there, but encourage them to make that choice themselves. There's just so much around midwifery that it's so grey and so lost. Nobody actually knows the answers anymore. That's where we've got to, and no one's willing to be transparent and say, we know the answer.
That's because people are looking in the wrong direction for an answer. They're looking outside themselves. And do you know what? The byproduct of our childhood trauma and generational trauma is the midwifery system. So we can keep going outside ourselves and go, change the NICE guidelines, change the NMC code of conduct, change it. Well, no, because that is still going outside yourself. I've got to fix this, I've got to fix that. We have created this shit show. We've done it. We do it through fear, like authoritarian parenting. Children lose who they are. They move away from their authenticity because they need an attachment. The ego forms. Then we start becoming people pleasers. And we tell women, no is a full sentence. You can say no to a vaginal exam. How the fuck does a woman say no to a vaginal exam when she can't even tell her nail technician, stop, you're hurting me? We've got a generation of women who are not embodied, and we have to keep going on outside solutions. Well, what does this say? What does the evidence say? What does your heart say? It's so black and white thinking. Well, we need evidence for this and evidence for that. Yeah, and I'm not saying get rid of that. I'm not saying get rid of it. Where's both? Where's the feminine, divine feminine intuition?
Yeah, exactly. And when I had my last son, Henry, I lost my whole voice. When do I lose my voice? Never. And the point, I was like being gagged. I was petrified of birth. I was petrified of having a vaginal birth. I was petrified of him dying. I did not connect with him. I have a different relationship with him now because of the trauma bonded to that, with all the, you're type 1 diabetic. What did you eat here? Oh, your blood sugar was 12. You're an arsehole. It just was so fear-based, and I became fearful. And one of the midwives recently said something to me just before I left. She said, I've got to get out of this job or I'm never going to be able to have a baby. What the hell? That's coming from a midwife in the middle of the system. And I'm not saying by any stretch of the imagination that we need to be, you know, this a huge feminine war. It's not about that. It's about education. It's about learning, but it's about transparency. And in our code of conduct, which I wrote to the NMC, I've posted it on my Twitter, a whole 8-page document. I wrote to your governing body, my governing body, I've written to them. And I pulled apart all their code of conduct and put the experiences that basically inadvertently made me that I was breaching their rules because of the system. That's why you've got fear-based midwives. That's why you've got midwives running scared. That's why you've got midwives burnt out, exhausted, because they know inadvertently they're breaching all of those rules. But let me tell you something. As long as I got my fridge temperature updated by 4 p.m, I wasn't going to get in trouble. Let's just you know.
Oh, no.
I couldn't update. Oh, I sat with this woman and nurtured her. The one story that always sits with me, and it's still raw, is a young girl, and she knows I talk about this because I talk about it in the movement. A young girl came to the ward in COVID and knocked the ward door, and I was coordinating as a band 5, may I add. And she came in the door and she was in bits, and she was very young. You know, we're talking a teenager. And I put her in a room and I wasn't allowed to touch her, and she was sobbing behind this mask. And a little bit of time before, she had a little baby, and he died at home in her arms. And she'd rang the ambulance, and the ambulance came to get her and her baby. And as they took the little baby out, I think I remember her saying he might have banged his head on the door. And when they got, bearing in mind he was 29 days old, this little baby, and we'll call him Oscar because that is his name, and we will remember Oscar because she didn't get the chance to talk about Oscar's passing because she was so ashamed. And my voice is going because of the pain, because I feel like she was the reason why I started to question everything. So she comes into the door, I put her in a room, I'm not allowed to touch her, she's hysterical, and she's on her own because we are in the middle of a lockdown and her partner cannot be with her. So unfortunately, this young girl went to the hospital and the doctor told the police that they thought she was responsible for the death of her baby, and she was arrested and put in prison at 29 days postnatal. And she didn't know in prison if he was alive or dead. Her story is heartbreaking, and we have to learn from this. This has gone on for centuries. This has gone on for years and years and years, attacking women, birth, that connection. It's so raw. And the awful thing about her story is she had to hold a dolly and show them how she fed her baby, changed her baby, held her baby. She was interrogated. And then her and her boyfriend were thrown on the street early hours of the morning and said, right, we'll let you know. It was horrendous. Now, when she went home, she never was able to tell anybody that her baby died because she thought she was responsible and she was scared. So people in the street knew she didn't have a baby anymore, and they go, she never told anyone, never told anybody he died because she was so broken. And it was heartbreaking. And I'm going to tell you, I hugged her in that room and we took our masks off and we talked because I knew something wasn't right. And it didn't matter what disease you caught. It's no different to being a nurse in a war with a horrendous, infectious disease. You do your duty to those people and you put yourself last. And that is the role of a midwife at her essence, at her core. And this young girl then went on to have her baby. Now, I brought her partner in and I broke all the rules. He came in and he sat in that room. And I remember the midwife at the desk and I were crying at her story. It was absolutely horrendous. Now, later on, the doctor was found to have been negligent in his decision making, and he was shipped out. Now, she never got an apology and she never got anything from it. She didn't want that, but her voice, and this is just one story in billions and billions of stories like this. And these women are left with a legacy of, it's gone now. So just because you've moved on doesn't mean to say that she will ever be able to process or move on from some of those things. We know they can because you go within, but it's hard when you've got trauma on top of trauma on top of trauma and you're at an age where you're childbearing and then you've got to go back to it. So I feel so much of midwifery, the true essence of what we are as a group, and when push comes to shove, and my other friends who are doing things on their own, that is the true essence of midwifery. And I don't even know if I like that word anymore. I don't like the word midwife. I don't know why. I don't feel attached to it. I feel that there's something else in the wise woman, in the apothecary, in the alchemy, all of this about what we've lost. And when you go into a hospital and you know it yourself, Nikita, when you march up and down those wards, you are not a midwife. You are not.
You're a robot.
You're a robot. 28 women. You're caring for 28 women. How on earth do you even know? I don't know any. I can't remember anyone. People come up to me in the street. You delivered my baby. I go, oh, did I? I don't remember anybody. It's like a blur. It's like an absolute shit show mist. And it's very sad because we're at a place now, like I say, where women need the truth. And to find the truth where I am, in my truth, in my honesty, in my sovereignty of who I am as a woman and a mother and a wife, a daughter, a sister, a cousin, I know who I am and I know what I'm about. And not many people have that ability to do that right now. And they're all running around scarpering for evidence and they do not know where to go. So we've created a fear-based maternity services. End of story. There's no love in it.
And you're right, we have created it because we are so wounded. We have gone through childhood without healing our generational and childhood wounds, and it can be so subtle. So you come home from school, Mummy, I got a C, why didn't you get an A? So then we start moving further and further away from our authenticity, and then the egoic archetypes start. You become a helicopter. You have to control what everyone is doing. So you've got, I'm not even going to call it peace. It's not. It's an illusion of control. And then we've got people pleasers, saviors, bleeding empaths, because we can't sit with our own wounds. And what people don't realize, what you don't feel, you cannot heal. And I see it all the time. Women will call me, this midwife made me feel something. Now, this is going to sound very different to those who haven't heard this before. No one can make you feel anything. A mirror can't reflect what isn't there. So if you have strong beliefs and you go to the midwife and she can make you wobble, what core wound is she poking at? Is it the I'm not enough wound? I'm going to be rejected. I'm going to be abandoned. And we go outside ourselves. We point, we blame, we bitch, we moan. They've done this, they've done that. And then so the sue culture begins. We have to find someone responsible because we can't sit with our own agony and heal it. Soothing isn't healing. Going to yoga, scrolling through fucking Instagram, getting on the phone and bitching and moaning to your friends, that is not healing, that is soothing. We have to take responsibility for the midwifery system we see in front of us. And it doesn't come from bitching and moaning and bitching and moaning. It comes from doing the deep inner work. Our fruits will reflect our roots. And if we all start going inside, remembering who we are, healing our childhood wounds, embodying, actually feeling them, being connected to our body, are you going to bitch and point and moan and blame? You'll take now. I say trauma is not your fault. It's not your fault. It's no one's fault. Well, it's your parents' fault, but it's your responsibility to heal from it. We can't expect women to go in and navigate the system and know their rights when you've got wounded midwives who have never looked at their wounds. I think the self-development should be taught at ground zero in midwifery. We've got women who don't know how to navigate the system because they've got no internal compass, and we've got this shit show and we keep going outside ourselves. Change the NMC, change the nice guy, change here, and the byproduct will be the external will reflect the internal.
I think the hard thing is for people, it's when until you start speaking the reality and you start speaking the transparency and the truth, you cannot start, it's hard to accept what is real. And I think that's one thing I did was I would come home and I would stand at my front door and I would shake off for 10 seconds and I go, don't take it home, don't take it home, don't take it in the house. And I would never, my husband would say, I never talked about work. I talked about work to my midwife friends, but never did I bring that entity into my home. And I think when you look at all of these drivers for maternity services, I understand people want to save lives, but what we're missing is that mothers and babies will ultimately die in labour or birth or in pregnancy. Of course they will. And we almost seem to think we're going to save everybody's lives. And I just can't get my head around that, because no matter what, our soul contract about life and death is already planned out. You know, you're at a place where you can't even talk to women about I know this is this is uncomfortable, what I'm going to say, but I just need to get it out around people that might understand. Death is normal and it's part of our life. And we all are born through one portal, and it's in a womb. All of us, we come from one place. Any man can make a baby, but women grow it and women birth it. And that is why it's so important to have that connection with yourself. I understand that now. I didn't understand that through uni, because they teach you the opposite, and you then start questioning yourself as a woman. So what we are not doing is we are not able to empower women, even in their darkest and difficult days when their babies die. It's always, well, you were a smoker. Did you do this? Did you do that? But what about explaining that people do die and babies do die? And we've now gone with, oh, no, it doesn't happen because we've got Saving Babies' Lives Care Bundle on top, and we'll do everything possible to save you and your baby. So women don't believe at any point that them or their baby might die. And I'm not saying we want to go there on that, because it's not nice and you don't want to bring that energy in. But what we've lost is this reality that we are human beings and we die. And babies do die, and mummies do die, and women die postnatally, and will die in our 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s. But we talk about that, oh, one day we might die, let's talk about our will. But what we never talk about, what we never touch on, is those areas that might just be a statistic. that you might be that statistic. So what we do is we go the opposite end and we say, we're going to save you all. And we're going to do all this stuff to make sure all your babies live. How do we know? How do we know that some of those people that are now who've lost their babies weren't that statistic in the first place? You just don't know. And what's happening now, you've got this divide between midwives and women. Women are not trusting midwives anymore, and women are there's a huge break and a void between that now, which is what is planned. This is perfectly planned. It's working to their perfection of what they wanted. So now you've got women who don't trust midwives. Not saying all, this is not the collective, by the way, you know, not everybody has this, but this is my view on what I've been sitting back and watching, because I'm no longer in the system. So have you noticed any report that comes out or any investigation, where are the midwife stories? Nowhere. The theme that comes out is there's not enough midwives, there's poor retention, and there's a bit of bullying culture, but where's the actual voices? Where's the puzzle, the piece of that puzzle where the midwives come in and say, actually, we saw this and we felt this? And the reason why they don't do that is because when you do this, which is what's happened to me, I get told whistleblowers go missing overnight.
Because midwives make choices out of fear, not authenticity.
Yeah.
And it's like you said, it's working. Divide, conquer. You keep people afraid, you can control them very easily. We've got this dichotomy, haven't we? We can see it on social media. You've got one extreme, hospital birth is safe. So you've got women going, oh, that equals safe. Well, that means that if I have a home birth, my baby could die. And then you've got the other people going, home birth, don't go to hospital. Oh, home birth equals this. And then if a tragedy happens at home, that goes straight to the news. And we don't actually pay attention to how many babies die under the care of obstetricians. We go straight to the witch hunt. But we have this dichotomy. When people call when push comes to shove, what should I do? I don't know. What do you want to do? Like, when we start giving people all the answers, we are disempowering them. We are removing that important journey to go within. Well, if I have my baby at home, is it safe? No. Might be.
You go in. When do you ever walk in? I love it when a woman comes in and she goes, I know, I want this, 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 and this. And I go, brilliant. But I look at this a bit like religion. I'm not religious in any way. I like to think I'm a bit open about everything, and I'll read everything and I'll listen. I'm a bit of a sponge. I'm like, oh, I'll have a dabble over there. But what gets to me is, if you have to be so rigid in anything, your expectations will be broken. And midwifery is rigid. It doesn't allow you to expand. It doesn't allow you to utilize each and individual person. They talk about bloody empowering better birth care and all of that, but actually you can't empower those women because you're restricted in your evidence, you're restricted in your experience, and you're restricted in your knowledge. Not in here, you're not, in your heart space, if you're really in connection with yourself. And that's the problem. When I was a midwife, I thought, I want to tell women about aromatherapy, and I want to tell women that they can go and do this. I want to tell women about this, but you can't. So a bit like religion, if you're a Christian and they say, well, you can't do that because that's not Christian values. But what, who said?
This is it, Vic. Like, all suffering is an attachment to an outcome. When we have this rigid, I have to have this belief or my world will fall apart. As soon as someone just pokes it, you're a tree that isn't rooted and you fall over. And then we've got to go outside and point and blame.
Yeah. And most midwives go to work to make a difference. I truly believe that, on my hand, on my heart. They make an oath to do no harm, and they go into those hospitals and they think and believe that they are doing everything within the best of their ability, which you are. But actually what I realized was, although some of the women that I looked after, when they left, they were still traumatized by this system, by the environment, by the brick, by the cell block, you know, bed spaces with no windows, no vitamin D, no essence. You've got to look at this now. There's no community support. So what you've got now is women at home who can't pick up a phone to a GP, who can't pick up a phone to a community midwife because it's so busy, and the staffing is so low, everyone's getting brought into the acute setting. And then you've got women who probably have so I take this for an example. I had a lady that had a small bit of swelling, just got a bit of edematous in her feet, you know, that was it. She couldn't get hold of anybody for 10 more days, and it just escalated. She became more anxious. She turns up angry. I've been sat at home. Now, if there was a community midwife or community bases back again, and in those spaces, that's a quick call, reassurance, you know, elevate your feet, can't do any of that. So what's happening is these women are no longer able to be cared for and utilised in the community. So they're ending up going to hospital. We know hospital, and we know what then happens, because it escalates. So when I left, I walked into the community centre that I worked in, and I carried a caseload there of 200 women at one stage, and I was a band 5. 200 women. Can't tell you a single name, maybe one, because she follows me on some of my stuff. But I went to her and I sat down and said, right, I've left midwifery and I've handed in my PIN. The reason why I've handed in my PIN is because if I speak out, they're going to put me through a fitness to practice for being unprofessional. And I don't want that. I want to take back control. And also, you know why I've given back my PIN, which I've talked to you about before. So I went in and I said, I'm not on the register, but I've got 6.5 years of midwifery experience. I've never had a patient complaint that I'm aware of, because obviously up top they might deal with it without you knowing. I've never been investigated for my practice, and I'd like to come to you, and if you can pay me the same wage as the hospital do, I will sit here day in and day out and I will nurture your women, and I will go and run my own women's circle on a Friday night on my own, and I will start healing this trauma. Sorry, no. Why? Well, because, you know, we have to go through the hospital. We can only take on hospital midwives. I said, okay, right, can you put that in writing to me and go and do some investigating? I want you to know why you can't employ me. So doctors can go off and be private, their practices, in their homes, they can do whatever they want. Nurses can float around, midwives restricted. Why? Because birth, when you lose control of women and you start losing control of women's power, you wouldn't be able to knock us down with a rock. We are the most powerful entity on this planet. Women are divine. So if you get women who are so empowered and know what they want and free birth, they've got no control over you. And they want control over women, they want control over birth, and they want control of the generations. That is my belief. And the place that we're in now is we have got to go right into those grassroots, and we have got to send love to these women. We have got to sit in space with them, and we have got to help them. We've got to listen. This isn't about education of the system. It's about nurture. There's a huge wound here, and this will go on for decades. It will go on forever if we
cut this bullshit.
Yes.
Every woman, every midwife, doula, doctor who trains with me, they have to do the inner work first. We cannot attend births in ego. We cannot attend births with our own wounds and bleed over people that didn't cut us. We can't do this anymore. We don't understand that when, like, there's another level of education in birth. So yeah, it's really good to learn about physiological birth, your rights, how to navigate the system, but it's almost superficial unless you do this stuff, because here's why. So if you've got a wound of I'm not enough, or I'm going to be abandoned, it will keep showing up in your life with one form or another. Might be in the form of a tyrannical midwife who doesn't listen to you and judges you. Might be a social services referral. And unless you heal that wound, it's going to keep going. You haven't dealt with it yet. You haven't dealt with it yet. Now, that being said, you can only start to heal when you feel heard, when you feel seen, when you feel safe and loved and wise. And women don't feel this because they're carrying generations of wounds, and these threads that create this tapestry of self-hate, self-rejection, self-abandonment. And then it's the midwifery system is a reflection of our own self-hatred. So unless we have that space to start connecting, and I can't stress this enough, all my doulas and birth keepers are trained in this. We need a safe space for women to go, right, listen to me. When someone feels listened and they feel safe, you would never stop in the middle of the M25, bend over and tie your shoelaces because it's not fucking safe. You'll get hit by a car. You need a safe space to do the work and start healing. And I am so, like, when we first met, I was like, holy shit, this is awesome. And then the more I've seen you grow as a person, that you've gone from okay, I do know myself, but I'm going, nope, forget it, I'm here. And everything you do is heart-centered, and I applaud you. Now, right, it's all well and good me saying how amazing Victoria is, but you haven't heard the whole story, guys. Why did you leave? What made you go, fuck this?
God, that is so complex. So it started when I got diabetes. I was discriminated against. Now I know there's another midwife on here from where I worked. I know she'll vouch for this. As a 37-year-old woman who was ran half marathons, was a runner, gym, to be diagnosed with type 1 diabetes was soul destroying. I felt quite broken. And I realized I've got a lot of trauma in my teens when my parents divorced. And I knew that organ in my healing journey is linked to that era, you know, in that my solar plexus, that area of that healing. But what really resonated with me is I was a good midwife. I've never been off sick, always worked, did extras, you know, just got on and quite easygoing. I'm a bit of a joker, so I like a bit of a laugh, hiding in the lift, scaring people. That sort of, I was quite lighthearted. When I took my reasonable adjustments to my manager and said, they've told me I'm not allowed to loan work because I was hypoing on my own in a clinic with a baby in the middle of nowhere. And actually, to titrate insulin takes years and you never get it right. So I just needed a bit more wraparound. And she went, no. And she then moved me to a place where I was completely isolated and on my own. So originally I was with a little team and there might have been people there, but I was locking up alone. And anyway, so it started there, and I started realizing there's a real element of control here. So I raised a grievance, three in fact, and she wasn't mean to me, but she was subtly corrosive, a bit like emotional damage, I would say. So I would cope better if someone came up and thumped me in the face. I'd be like, right, come on, let's have it out. Boom, done. Me and my husband might have an argument. Boom, done. See you later. We grow from it. We grow every time. But I can't cope with this. No one can. This subtle corrosion. And that's what I started recognizing. And then when a few of us joined together, we realized it was happening to a few of us. So I put in a grievance, wasn't afraid. I'm not afraid of these directors. I'm not afraid of these executives. They all sit on the toilet in the morning as normal people. They probably got worried. So, you know, people go, I always used to say to the girls, if you're going to go into a meeting, just imagine he had a poo this morning and wiped his bum. And she went, that's not even funny, but you think, just put them onto that level. Then you just think, just because they get £100 a year doesn't make them amazing martyrs. Like, just ground yourself in it. So I went through the grievance process, and then it wasn't upheld, and I got partial uphold. Now, what came out of my grievance, which I will post eventually on X, is they said that they recognised there was a culture of maternity and it needed a cultural investigation. They'd applied for some funding to have NHS England come in and do some work. Now, admittedly, our trust now, I don't think, has been that bad. The bullying before was quite rife when I was a student, but it got better. And I think most people actually do get on quite well. And they're a fantastic team and they work their fucking balls off for very little money. So when that cultural review didn't go ahead, I pushed. I want to see this cultural review. I want to see who's coming to do it. I want to be part of it because this came out of my grievance. Yeah, Victoria. So what are you going to call it? Team building. No, I don't think so. You're going to call it a cultural investigation. No, we're not. We're going to call it team building. I said, I bet you fucking are. So I pushed for that. And then they told people 2 days before, bearing in mind midwifery is rammed, 2 days before they told people to go to these meetings, but they all had their clinics full and no one could get there. So it was all planned. I thought, oh, you just don't want anyone to speak up. So when I went to the door, which bearing in mind was on NICU, one of the most delicate places with ICU and HDU, and they put a meeting like that on NICU. And I thought, you're so insensitive. We're coming in and out of a ward with parents who have been told bad news, babies that are poorly, cross-contamination, potentially. Do you know what I mean? They just don't use their noggin. They're a bit dopey. So I stood outside the door with a fellow midwife, and out of this meeting with this NHS England people came the director, the HOM, the matrons, all the senior management, the board of executives all came out. They'd all been in there on their own together. And then they scoured who was in that queue. And that intimidated everybody. And hardly anybody turned up after that. So what then happened was one of the matrons drove one of the investigator people, to community and sat there whilst they interviewed staff. What happens? No one really speaks up, not their truth, because they're feared, they're scared. And this is the part that's missing in all of this puzzle. It's all right having BBC articles and news about all these hospitals that are in special measures. Where's the midwife stories? Where are they? And no one's clicking. And it's frustrating. And it's frustrating because I hear them, I see them, I watch them, and they are a broken generation. And that's why you're getting a broken generation looking after broken generation. So you've got a whole broken generation.
You've got the blind leading the blind, my dear.
Yeah. So after that, I then started to think something's not right here. And I started doing a bit more digging. And then I left the corrupt RCM, who, by the way, are the richest union, 11.9 million a year they take. And they support no one. They might support some, but they pick and choose who they want to support. Now, the union were going behind my back and talking about my case to my managers. I was livid, so I put a huge complaint, you know me, bang, bang, bang on the laptop, that's going to London, rah, rah, rah. And then after that, I put in an employment tribunal against them. Now, I didn't know what I was doing, complete novice. I probably should have been a lawyer because I do like a little bit of the arguing, but I realised that's all corrupt as well, the judicial system, so I'm better just being my own lawyer at home behind the laptop. So I put in my own ET with no support from my union, even though they knew what they'd done was against the law. So they had breached reasonable adjustments. So when I was up against a barrister, which they employed, I did some research on her. She was probably about £4,000 a day, this barrister. And I sat there at this very seat and I was shitting myself. And I went up against this barrister and she was like, strike out, strike out. And the judge said, nope, I'm giving Victoria a 4-day hearing. So some part of me knew that there was something in it. Now, I know employment tribunal claims in the court are very hard to prove. And the employment tribunal system is so restricted, it's very hard to win a case. And a lot of them are paid out. Well, 90% of them are paid out. So I thought, well, I want to go to the High Court. I want to get this in the European Court. I want people to come forward. So when I did that, the trust then stepped up. Oh, we'll give you what you want. Have your breaks. It was actually cringe. I was like, you are pathetic. So I withdrew the claim because they were only offering me money, and the judge told me he can't input any infringement on the trust. It's just a recommendation. So I thought, okay, you're no different to NHS England. You're no different to NMC. What am I doing? This is not about money. I don't want your money. So I withdrew because I didn't want the money, and I declined the money, the offer. And also they were going to gag me if I took the money, and I don't do gagging. I don't know if you can see that, but Victoria doesn't get gagged. So I then went back into the trust, but things, the COVID thing, like I had jabs, you know, and then I thought the wards are really quiet. Things started adding up there, and then I started thinking about what's in, you know, you go into the cupboard, right? And you get, this is matches, by the way, but you go into the cupboard and you get out a drug and you think, I don't know where this has come from. This could have come from eBay. Like, I know this sounds silly, but I just thought, what am I giving women? Do I know what's in this drug? Well, no, because when I was at uni, I only had to pick one drug to study, which I did labetalol. And that drug I gave out like sweets, so I felt confident with labetalol. But when I have to give Mag-Sulf, I don't really understand what Mag-Sulf is. Not really. Not. I get it, but when you actually think about what all these, which hasn't stopped happening, my phone has not stopped ringing. When you start thinking about each drug, how do you know what you're giving? You don't. Like, you don't know what it's doing to her or her. So all these things, it was like I woke up and my brain just went, oh, hello. And then everything flooded in all at once. And it was like I was walking around like a zombie going, oh my God, oh my God. Oh, it all makes sense. Oh my God, this is really terrible. Oh my God. And I went into an absolute breakdown. I had a complete breakdown. I did not leave my house for about 7 weeks solid. I was a wreck. I had sticky pajamas. I lost so much weight. I didn't want to see anybody. I was a wreck. But it was the beginning. The demise was my growth. And I went into such a dark place of the knowing and the transparency and the honesty that it helped me get here today. So after all of that, I went back to work and I started questioning things like the vaccines. Now, I'm not an anti-vaxxer, but I then started questioning. We don't have COVID anymore, and we have got a huge sick population amongst maternity staff. We've got increased stillbirths. We've got placentas that are calcified from women who don't smoke. I've never seen that before. You know, lots of them, you might see one, oh, you know, she had a calcified placenta. I wonder what that's all about. It happens a lot. Smaller placentas for babies dying a lot in the 28 to 33 week, like real heavy stuff. And our stillbirth room at times felt like it was never empty. And there were just lots of things that I started to question and go, are we causing harm? Have we caused this? Was my question. Have we created this? And I kept coming back to my heart space. Yes, but I don't know why. And I don't know how. So I then started to do the backward journey. Then I started looking at the Florence Nightingale, and actually she was great because she realized we just needed to be clean and more clinical, but not fully. We need dirt. We need, you know, the kids to eat the slugs. No, you know what I mean? Like, they need to. But the place that we've got to now is that we've gone so the other way, we don't even know how to get back there. So when I started doing all of that, when I went through this grievance process, I lost all respect. Now, I've got big respect for one of my managers. I adore her. She is beautiful. And it pained me to get into a altercation with her over my social media posts. And I was quite harsh with her, but it had to come because I'm not your friend. I am me, and I am here for a role, and I'm here for the people. So after that, I then started going back to work. And then on my last shift, bearing in mind I had over 360 days off sick since 2020. So it was a lot of sickness. I had to do a lot of healing and a lot of painful work that was, as you know, Nikita, going into those wounds, parent wounds, family wounds, sibling wounds. It's your own misdoings, wrongdoings. It's hard to have that mirror, really hard. But now I love the mirror. I'm like, bring me the mirror, because I grow every day. Now, when I went to my last shift, I went on the shift, and I've put this in my NMC and the complaint, that normally there are about 8 to 10 midwives per shift. And when I was going to work in the last sort of 6-7 months, there was like 2-3 of us on labour ward. It was grim. And you just felt every shift, you're like, the board's full, and it just didn't feel right anymore. And I think that took me a long time to unpick that as well. But I knew I was going to leave because I wrote my notice. Again, my brain does things before my body catches up. So I wrote my notice and put it in my drafts for ages. It was simple. Please accept my resignation with immediate effect. Done. Not coming back to work. And I knew it was there, and I knew it was coming. I didn't really tell anybody either, but I think people always knew I was going to leave. Now, when I went on my last shift, bearing in mind, I knocked at the chief executive's door, told her everything that I was seeing. I was a union rep now for GMB because the RCM are so corrupt. I went over to GMB, and I sat in on a few cases, and it really alarmed me, what the witch hunt, even in nursing. I was absolutely horrified. And on the piece of paper at the end of the meeting, my senior rep said to me, well, what did you learn from that? And what I wrote was, don't stay in the NHS. Don't stay here, ever. And then as time went on in that respect, I then went on shift this particular day, and it was so busy. We had wards of women. I think there was like 6 or 7 sections going on, an elective. Triage was rammed. Labour ward was rammed. I had a student, myself, my band 7 coordinator, and one other midwife that came in, and that was it. It was so busy. And so I had a postnatal, and then I had an induction, and then I could hear a lady screaming. Now she knows that I talk about this because she talks about it herself. She was screaming, and I could hear her. Now Labour ward isn't too far from triage in my unit. You can hear what's going on. And as a midwife, you'll know you have this inner sixth sense about things. You hear, you listen, and you hear a grunt or a noise, and you know what might be happening. So this lady, I just couldn't get her out of my mind at all day. So I dealt with the postnatal, see the wording, I dealt with the postnatal. Hear what I just did then? It's dealt with. She's a person. Do you know what I mean? I even pick myself up on these things now. I realise how I've been indoctrinated at times. So to cut a long story short, my boss, bless her, had to make some really shit decisions, and she should never have to do that. And the decision is, we haven't got space to take a lady that had to come to labour ward at 11 a.m. and it was now 5 p.m. She didn't have the best CTG. She'd been labouring all day, and she'd had a baby a few years before, so she was para 1, and she had a previous heavy bleed. You know, just lots of things that you think, we've created that she probably would have had a baby if she felt safe. But she was so uptight, and I got told to go up to triage and help out with all my other patients. And what I noticed that day was my signature was on everything, in every room. And I shit my pants. I shit myself. I kid you not. I was like, my signature is on every CTG. It's on every bloody drug. This is so worrying. And my boss came down and she went, oh, we call you the Wednesday wing woman because you helped the band 7 out so much. You know, I don't get paid for this shit. And all these little things just started to make me go, you don't respect me. I'm just a number. And so are these women. So what's the point? So anyway, I brought this lady down. I banged on my matron's door because that's who I am and said, I need you to come out. I need you to, I was kind of like problem solving at this stage. I cannot leave her. I just knew something wasn't right. And I just brought her down to the room, asked her to have a wee. Obviously, we know if she can't wee, there might be a baby there. And I don't have to assess if she's going to have a baby. Because, you know, when you get women in those spaces, they all of a sudden have a baby. But she wasn't going to have a baby in a room with loads of other people listening to her labour. She was biting the mattress. She'd been in labour since 7 a.m. and she was now 5 p.m. and she hardly had any pain relief. She was in agony. So I brought her into the room and she said to me, I'm going to die. I was like, oh my God. So I got my boss, listen to women. That's what comes out of all these reports. We don't feel heard. We don't feel listened to. So I brought her into the room, like I say, I put her on the CTG, but I just wanted to sit her up and she wanted an epidural. And that was my only focus, was to get her out of pain because it might relax her. Blood pressure wasn't great. She just wasn't doing what she was capable of doing. So in the end, she delivered quite quickly and her baby was in really bad condition. Really, really bad. Now, something happened to me that I had detached from myself, and I can remember as if I can see myself from the top of the room watching in. So I did some sort of attachment, protection perhaps, and I can see that I'm kind of like going around the bed and they're all the staff are helping to resuscitate the baby. And it was bad. They even wanted the consultant in from home. It was dreadful. It was just so unnecessary. And I can just hear her over and over, is she okay? Is she okay? Is the baby okay? Is the baby okay? And the dad was just, and I just seem to snapshot everybody's emotion and I hold it. And then it makes me so desperately sad in my heart, in my stomach. You know, you can hear it in my voice now. It was horrendous. And it wasn't the litigation, because I knew that I wasn't out of fear, oh, I'm going to get, you know, in trouble. It wasn't about that. It's about what we'd done to her. Why did she have to go through this? Her own journey, yes, because our birth is our choice, as you well know. So I then left the room and I day texted everything. And I went back in and gave her, and she was so, so lovely to me. She's like, oh my God, thank you for everything. And I was like, I was with you for about 37 minutes. Like, but I made such an impact on her, but it's left a huge trauma. And I mean, the baby was fine. I had to go through MRIs and lots of other stuff, but it was horrendous. And after that shift, I day text and I knew I was done. And he said, I'm done. I don't want to do this. Went out. The next morning I went to healing and got into my healing group and I just broke down. And they scooped me up and they said, you do not need this. You need to just go and find you and you will find your path. And they helped me in that moment that I lost all fear. I felt like I was floating and I just pressed send on that email and I just said, I'm out. And when I went back to work the following day, the Wednesday, because I only worked 2 days, my boss, I want a word with you. I want to speak to you. Come on, stop being silly. Stop being silly. It angered me even more. I was so pissed off. I was like, don't disrespect me. Just because I've had some wobble with my diabetes doesn't mean I'm not of a sound mind when it comes to the protection of the public and humanity. So that was it really. And then after that, I didn't go back. They paid me my notice pay. Now the next bit you're going to be quite probably not shocked at, but they paid me my notice pay even though I didn't supply a sick note, because they probably thought she's going to whistleblow, just pay her. Because obviously they've had lots of emails from me over the years ranting my shit off. When I left, I had an NHS fleet car. Now I think this is another incentivized way of keeping you. They like to think, oh, well, she can't leave, she's got a car. Well, I thought, fuck it, it's only a car, I'll buy another one. So I left, and in my contract under the NHS Fleet Solutions, my handbook has got my workplace all over it. So it's like you wouldn't know who owned the company. It looked like it was owned by the trust. So in that it says, when I leave, they will deduct my final salary of my final payment of the car. Now it would never have been enough because there was £1,200 of the car outstanding, right? So do you know what they did? They sent all my data to a debt collection agency called Accredited Management in Leeds and gave my name, address, email address, and phone number. And I have been harassed by this debt collection agency. So I went back to the trust and asked for a DSAR. Said, I want to know what you've said, because in your terms and conditions, it does not say that you will ever share my data. Now, this is coming from a hospital that when a patient's mother rings up and she's worried sick if her daughter's safe, I can't even tell her and reassure her, your daughter's okay. What the fuck? I was like, no, you don't get to do this to me. So I'm now suing Accredited Management for £5,000 for breach of GDPR, and I've sent a notice of intention to prosecute to the trust, because that is not okay. Because when you are trained as a midwife, GDPR is ingrained into your blood, and it all never added up. So there's all these other things that are going on. Then I sent my exit interview to the chief exec. Then I sent my exit interview to every single MP before the election. Keir Starmer, Rishi Sunak, all the local MPs. Oh, we don't want to know because you're not in our constituent. Sorry, I didn't realise that babies' lives are questionable, or in any way, shape or form we shouldn't be taking control. What the hell? So none of my local MPs wanted to know, not one of them. And I hounded them. I was like, you need to know what's going on in these hospitals. So then I started the With Women movement, which you know about. That's how I met you. I met a couple of tossers along the way in that, if I'm honest, who I think were either sent to sabotage or just were full of ego, that it never worked. And I got a message from a midwife who's got quite a good brand, and she's an ex-NHS midwife, who warned me and said, be careful, these groups don't last more than 6 months because they get sabotaged. And she was right. Now, I got absolutely horrendous abuse, and a group on Twitter put out a statement about me saying that I was responsible for a death of a baby and named the baby. And that was my wound. I realized I had some huge inner work to do. I was a wreck. I didn't eat. I didn't sleep. I thought, did I kill that baby? I doubted myself. I was like, if they're saying it, I must have done. Triggered. Unhealed trauma, mirror, all of it.
Right. I want to stop here for a second, because this is important. Right. So a lot of people will hear that someone called you a baby killer, and their immediate solution is, don't say that to her. Is that the solution? Or, I understand you just went, what's the trigger? If that isn't true, now forget the situation. You know the situation isn't true. But what inner child wound has made you go against your authenticity for even a second entertaining that?
Because my own family at times have lied about me, or made me feel I'm too much, too loud, too this, too that, and have continued with their own narrative, and it brought up all of that. But actually what's come from that is I've gone full circle, and now I love my family. And I haven't been able to say that for 13 years. And there's still no communication, and there's still no people like resolve. I don't need it. None of us need it. We're all our own individual people and can move on in our lives. And that's what that did for me. So I blessed that post, because although it made me understand lots of things about what was going on externally, it made me go so within that even my family and my friends will tell you I am a completely different person in the last 9 months, because it's healed something. So
yeah, you've gone inside, so the outside doesn't affect you. People's solutions are, we have to fix the external. They're not allowed to say this. You can't say this word. No, go inside. Why are you being triggered by it in the first place? The mirror can't bloody reflect what isn't there.
What was interesting from that experience, so although I went in, I had to ask the question, was I in any way involved or contributed to that poor family losing their baby? Because I wanted to know. I wanted to learn. I wanted to understand. I wanted to reflect. I wanted to go, was there something that... Now, they actually said that I lied on my coroner's statement, that I didn't go to court. I mean, when do you not get to turn up to court? You know, I'll bloody arrest up my arm. I'll be marched down there, you know? So there was loads of stuff that I thought, God, this person must be saying some truth. But because I was so triggered, I knew there was an area there that I needed to work on deeply. And it was a huge, huge sister wound, definitely. So when I went to the coroner and asked for the statement, they told me I wasn't entitled to it because I wasn't named in the case. So that didn't make any sense. I then screenshotted everything and went back. Now, I got so much abuse from that. The abuse was horrific. And the two people that set the movement up with me encouraged that family to do that. And as midwives, you do not play on people's loss as a way. You know what I'm
Jesus.
I really struggled with that more than anything. Now, these people had only just had their coroner's outcome. So I went to the coroner and they said I wasn't entitled to the transcripts. They've never sent them to me. I got my coroner's statement because I very briefly looked after this person before labour. And the trust the solicitors didn't even want my coroner's statement. What my concern was, has someone lied somewhere under oath? Or has the trust changed a statement or got a statement and a name mixed up, which can happen? I thought, oh, there's something not right here. So I went to my director, my HOM, head of midwifery. I went to the legal team and I screenshotted every single thing and sent it to them. And you know what? They weren't interested. And I was still an employee. They didn't protect me. They didn't back me up. They didn't offer me anything. My union weren't interested because it was libel. Well, okay, I understand that, but that can ruin someone's career. And that's what's then made me realise it's easy, isn't it, to send out on social media a post that discredits somebody and ruins their whole life in one click of a button. So what I did in that was actually gathered all the evidence from the trust that when they said, Vic, you weren't involved in this case, the care that you gave was very brief, and the coroner did not want to see your coroner's statement in the court. So all of these things then I went back to the woman's space, and instead of attacking her and going, oh, you bloody mouthy cow, rah, 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 I went into her space and thought, she has also lost a child. So not only has this family lost the child that they're saying that I was part of, she also lost a child. So the space that they're coming from is grief and pain and despair. And I do not have the right to judge her journey. I have to just go within and heal what I feel in this. And that was all I did. I didn't engage ever again. I just left it because I knew it would come out and it will pass. Because something I say to all my friends is, what you feel now in 20 minutes, you will not feel. You will feel differently in an hour and 2 hours. So when you have a moment of, oh my God, wait it out, sit in the uncomfortable, and then just see what.
Go through it. We can't heal if we don't feel. We've got a society that is constantly saying, well, I mean, it happens from childhood. Stop crying. I'm going to punish you. But children don't think they're being punished for their behaviour. They're being punished for their feelings. And then we grow older and we start getting all these uncomfortable feelings. Doctors, pill for it. And then when we see people arguing with each other, what we don't realise is you're not having an argument with a grown-ass adult. You are having an argument with the person of the age they were when they were wounded. So you're speaking to a 4-year-old. And we try to ignore our feelings, move it to one side. I feel this, I don't want to feel it. The healing is in the feeling it. The healing is in underneath the wounds, not soothing. We're in a perpetual state of soothe. Bitch, moan. I'm picking up the phone to my friend. They'll validate me.
Yep.
Why can't you validate yourself? When did you abandon yourself?
Yeah.
Look in the mirror and see what the lack is.
Yeah.
And obviously only do this if it's safe to do so. But my darling, I wanted to ask you something, because you made a statement once at When Push Comes to Shove that kind of blew my mind. You're obviously involved in a lot of the chat and the different way we see things that when push comes to shove, when it comes to pregnancy ailments. And you said, I was never a midwife. What do you mean by that?
Because I like to call it the masked midwife is how I felt. I wasn't really a midwife. I felt like I was just fighting fire. Now I believe anybody has the right to choose who they want to birth them, irrespective of degree, status. I think for me, I've battled with the fact that my inner calling as a woman doesn't match that, so it never felt like I was a midwife. That's why I think it was, which is why I'm not ready to touch people's lives yet with midwifery in the way that you do. It actually, there's still a bit of fear there, and the fear is there because look at these midwives that get shoved in prison, these birth keepers. But there are also the other side where there are some birth keepers that we know have been quite dangerous. So it's a really, really difficult area. So I think for me, reading up the history of wise women and who they were in our ancestral days and who they have been since millennia, that's not who we are today in the NHS. It's not possible. So for me to go from having a baby at home on the sofa to going into a hospital and pretty much only seeing that maybe 2 or 3 times in my whole career, that's not midwifery. So that's my view. That's not how my colleagues feel. My friend, who I'm very close to and I love dearly, she's a fantastic midwife. She feels like, because it's our own personal journey and our own personal perception. So for me, it doesn't feel like I'm the midwife that I could be and potentially should be, because the system is restrictive. Again, that expectation. And if you look back at, if we look at frequency and we look at energy and we look at attachment to, so if you think about going to Germany, most people go, oh, this is where the war was, or this is where all the, everything happened. You know what I mean? So you think that everybody, even now, after 100 years nearly, will go back into that energy and they feel it and they go, oh, this was really sad. You go to the Battle of Culloden, the field in Scotland, and you go there, you're going to know that there was bloodshed. So it's attachment to an energy and a frequency. And you can't destroy energy. You can't destroy the memory of something, which is energy. So when I started looking into midwifery and I looked at what midwife, the word midwife, where it came from, and then I looked at the word wise woman, and then I looked at with women, they've just changed the wording to suit their own narrative. So actually, when you start looking back through history, and my bookshelf is filled with the history of witches and witch hunts, because I believe that they wanted to obliterate women's freedom and women's right to birth where they wanted. And the church, I feel, took over for monetary reasons and control. So what happened is, if you were a midwife or you were a wise woman, a nurse, or you were a healer, you had to hide. So we have lost centuries of beautiful knowledge, and it was buried in the ground. People buried their knowledge, or they had to change their identity, and people didn't move around back then. But when I actually went through the witch trials and looked and read, the stories are horrific. I read somewhere that a young girl was laboring, went to the church and said, I'm laboring, can you come and help me? And they turned her away because she didn't have any money. And when she got home, her mother found her a local healer, and they were all imprisoned, stripped naked, head shaved, and their children, head shaved, tried. And back in those days, you couldn't speak as a woman in court, so you couldn't represent yourself, and no one could talk on your behalf, so you had no chance to even have your say. And then you were covered in tar with a noose around your neck, and you were marched through most of the Edinburgh. If you go to Edinburgh, you'll hear the stories on the mile on the way up to the castle. Castle Hill is horrific, and these women were then strangled in front of everybody and then burnt. And the stories attached to nursing and midwifery that comes from that is the birth of the Royal College of Midwives and the NMC, and the control of birth and the control of women's rights, especially when it is to do with their bodies. And there's a brilliant book called Nurses and Midwives, 1917. It's 1995. It's absolutely brilliant, and it just gives you that history. So if you think now where we are in a frequency sense, all of that is born from there. It's not. It's the same, and we're in the same era. We might not be stripped naked, a noose around our neck, but we're witch hunted, and we're tried unfairly, because the NMC have got 16 suicides on their hands last year. 16 nurses committed suicide in 2024 for being sent to the NMC. Now, there's a midwife who I know dearly, and she will tell her story. She's got an employment tribunal, and everybody needs to follow Midwife Miller. Lara Bassini, she was at Bristol Hospital. She was on One Born Every Minute. And when it comes out with her bundle, you will be sick, because they did it exactly what they did back in those days. They witch hunted her as women. They had no evidence on her. They contacted her patients for testimonies, and then she was gone. And now she's lost her whole career of 20 years. For what? Because she's blonde, because she's pretty, because she's clever, because she's funny, because she's sassy, because she's a maverick. Do you know what I mean? So it's here. The witch trials are still here. It's just
someone has asked, why do we not hear these stories more? Well, of course we don't hear them. Why would the mainstream narrative put that out there?
Well, I got told I'd go missing overnight. So why do you think? And women are more fearful, we're more conforming than men.
Yeah.
You know, I think if we can get a platform as midwives, we are going to blow this fucking shit apart. But we are scared. I'm not scared anymore, but they're scared and they won't do it. But I think if there is a safe platform, they will do it. But they don't, and they won't. And I'm not,
darling. They can't until they look inside their. If they don't understand what this script is they're carrying around from childhood, that I'm going to be abandoned, I'm going to be rejected, and the first thing these midwives will do when they hear you, they're going to go 3D. Yeah, but I have to pay my bills, and but they don't realize that has appeared, that form in their life, because of their scripts from childhood. Why do you think midwives accept such shit pay? Because they don't think they're worth anything. The unworthy wound is going through the blood of these women. Oh, I can't accept money. And there's even this sort of midwives shouldn't earn money bullshit. Like there's some sort of superiority in poverty. Where's this shit come from? What we can't, how can you change the world when you're skint? You know, it doesn't make any sense. It's like this superior, oh, well, it's much better not to have any money. And people have this. I've written a blog about it. You can look at it. It's 17 statements between healer and victim. Victims go for the either or. Well, it's this or this. Healers go, why can't I have both?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think we're at a stage now where we're fed up financially. We're being battered for council tax. We're being battered for extra bills. You know, you're getting told you can't even burn logs. You've got a log if you've got a chicken, which I found hilarious when someone put in a KFC chicken breast on. I was gone. I was like, that is so funny. You know, we're all being attacked and we're all burning out. And now I think we're at a stage where we're like, nah, people have lost the fear. They think, well, what have I got to lose? I literally walked out of my job. I didn't have another job. Admittedly, my diabetes has been really, really hard to manage. I've really struggled with it. I'm on and off insulin all the time because it's a mental battle. I don't feel fit to work in a job where they're not going to understand me. I'm scared of that because I've got that wound. I'm not confident enough to go
create your job.
Well, that's where I'm at now. So, but when I left, I sold everything that was of value. I sold everything. So now I live in a rental property. I've got probably the most expensive thing in my house is probably my ring that's on my finger. And my children, of course, because they're my most expensive value. I would literally walk out this door now with my kids and go and live on a farm or in a tent if I had to. I've got no fear anymore because there's no material attachment to anything apart from my family. That's it. And that's why I feel so empowered to be here now, because my TikTok had 400 people on it for about 2 months. And sorry, my ex. As soon as I put my face to it, as soon as I said, right, shit's going down, Vic's ready, waited all this time for this. And actually what I realized is I wasn't confident to do that movement on my own last year. And by God, I should have been. And I needed people to be my army. And I don't need that. I do not need it. I can be alone. I'm a lone wolf. I'm quite happy to just crack on. And actually, I do a lot better work. So my downloads come in the morning. I get flooded with information. I'm like, oh, by 3 o'clock, you ain't getting nothing out of me. Because it's all happened.
I think you are such an inspiration. And I hope there are midwives watching this that are inspired by this. But here's the thing, right? We are frogs slowly boiling in a pan. You accepted lockdown, guys. Well, there was something to fear. Was there? Yeah, well, I know people who died of it or with it. And what's the next thing? You're going to start accepting social credits and everyone's going to start getting electric cars and they'll turn you off because you're naughty.
Turn off.
And we'll accept it because that is the script from childhood. You're a good girl or you're a naughty girl. And that is our worth. That is the sum total of our worth. You're either good or a bad person. and we are playing into it. We are the passive supporters of the shit. And unless we start doing the inner work and remembering who we are, we will carry on with this spiritual malignancy.
Oh, Nikita, your words. Love it. You are an inspiration. I mean, literally, you are an inspiration. And I know you stand up and you do talks with midwives and you're very well received. But there are lots of midwives that don't receive doulas and blame the doula. Oh, the doula did this. But the doula is just trying to be there for what the woman wanted. And if that outcome, I've learned this, if the woman doesn't want to be touched and is prepared for the outcome and she's confident with where she is, let her be.
Well, it goes back to the us versus them, this illusion of separation. And guys, we ain't separate. We may have separate bodies, but we have one mega mind, a universal intelligence, the big I. And we are just the light bulbs that the electricity lights up. And when we buy into this bullshit, this illusion of separation, the us versus them, oh, fucking sheeple, they're still wearing masks, bloody anti-vaxxers. This is fear, it's not real. The only thing that is real is love, and you're buying into it, guys.
Yeah.
We don't need to give it the energy, don't hook into it. Victoria, you are an inspiration, you are compassionate, you're witty, you're charming, you're beautiful, you're heroic, you're everything that should be in a birth keeper and a woman, a wise woman. I am so grateful to have met you, that you have joined when push comes to shove, and I hope more people listen to you. You need to feel heard, you matter, your story matters. Tell the fucking world. And hopefully we will soon have a great awakening, and not just a superficial, the government don't give a shit about us awakening. Here, go within, or you're going to go without, guys. Thank you so much, Victoria. Where can people find you if they need to get in contact with you? Although I'm sure you are full.
I've Instagram, Victoria Rickson. I've got X, which is at honest_midwife. Just find me on there. I went from 440 to 17,000 in 2.5 days followers. It really blew up on there. And I've had a guy who's got a website. He's got a website and he's messaged me saying he put my Twitter post on his website, and he said he had over 100,000 clicks on it yesterday. And he said the stories are flooding in their thousands. So there's lots going on. And I think the place that we've got to is that women have been banging on doors to get answers. And then they just go, oh, we'll give you funding to go and start a group. But they actually haven't nurtured what they feel because there's no space for it. And that's where we're getting to. They're all questioning now, but I'm still not healed. But I've done all of that. What's the question? Go within. Thank you.
My darling, you are a force. You are something else, and
when I'm ready to be part of your team physically. When I'm ready, I will be there. I think I need another year.
You are there, like a woman transition. When they say I can't do it, you are already doing it. Your energy, your compassion, your soul is within when push comes to shove, and you have added something so spectacular to it. So thank you. And bloody tell the world about us. We've got loads of wonderful birth keepers who won't.
I do, and every comment, I've not answered everything. Thank you for all your comments and being here. And I've got quite a lot. Oh, my thing's fallen down. Guess what it's being held up with? A witch book, by the way. Let me just show you this book. This is the book you need to read. Let me just grab it and then I'll end the call, because I just want you to. Where is it? It's only a little one, but oh, here it is.
It's back to the front.
Oh, Witches, Midwives and Nurses, The History of Women Healers, 2nd edition by Deirdre English. That is a bloody good read.
Okay. Beautiful. We if you guys follow Artemis Academy, we have a whole module on witches. How women have been hunted. No more, ladies.
No more, ladies. We're not hunted.
Rise.
Thank you. Love you all.
Love you too. Thank you for joining me.